The studios at ITV that morning buzzed with their usual weekday chaos, producers rushing with clipboards, makeup brushes flying, interns whispering into headsets, but there was an extra tension in the air. Something unspoken, something electrified. Sir Patrick Stewart, beloved worldwide for his legendary roles and calm, dignified presence, stepped quietly into the green room, unaware of the storm waiting for him. He had arrived early, dressed in a navy blazer, his expression gentle but thoughtful. He was there to promote a new charity campaign for veteran support, a cause very close to his heart. He had no idea the episode would become the most talked about TV meltdown of the year. Across the hallway, Denise Welch paced the studio floor with her usual fiery energy. She had read Patrick's recent interview about celebrity responsibility and the toxicity of daytime TV debates. People close to her said she took it personally, maybe more than she should have. And Denise, when she took something personally, rarely backed down. By the time the cameras began to roll, the audience sensed something different. They clapped, but the air was sharp, like the moment before a clap of thunder. Welcome back to Loose Women. Christine Lampard beamed. We are joined today by the legendary Sir Patrick Stewart. The audience cheered wildly as Patrick stepped onto the stage. He smiled graciously, waved, and took his seat. For the first few minutes, everything seemed fine. Warm questions about his charity work, his connection with theater, humorous stories from the sets of Star Trek and X-Men. But then Christine gently shifted the conversation. So Patrick, recently you mentioned in an interview that many daytime panel shows. Before she could even finish, Denise leaned forward, eyes sharp. Yes, I'd love to discuss that, she said, her tone just a little too sweet. Because frankly, some of your comments sounded like a dig at programs like ours. Patrick blinked, surprised. A dig? No, Denise, not at all. I simply mentioned that debates can sometimes lose empathy. Denise cut in. So you're saying we lack empathy? The audience murmured. Christine shot a worried look to the producers offstage. Colleen Nolan shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Patrick held up a calm hand. No, I'm saying that sometimes discussion shows across television, across all networks, can become confrontational instead of constructive. But that's exactly what we try not to be, Denise said sharply. Are you accusing us of exploiting arguments for entertainment? I didn't say that, Patrick replied, still composed. I merely pointed out a general trend. It wasn't meant as an attack. But Denise's fuse had already been lit. The more he stayed calm, the more she seemed to burn. Well, it certainly sounded like an attack. She snapped. You come on here, promoting your film, talking down to us like some moral superior. Patrick straightened in his seat. For the first time, his voice carried a flicker of annoyance. Denise, I have done no such thing. I respect this show and its viewers. If you read malice where there was none intended, I can't be responsible for. Oh, so now it's my fault. Denise shot back. The atmosphere ignited instantly. The audience gasped. Christine tried to slide in. All right, maybe we can. No, let him finish. Denise insisted, turning toward Patrick. Because I'm tired of celebrities coming here and acting like they're above daytime television. You're not above us, Patrick. Patrick finally exhaled, visibly frustrated. That's not what I'm saying. But I won't be misquoted or misrepresented, not even for the sake of daytime drama. The word drama was the spark that lit the explosion. Denise slammed her hand on the table. You know what? If you think we're just cheap drama, why are you even here? Why did you agree to come on this toxic show you apparently hate so much? Patrick stared at her, eyes calm but firm. I came here to talk about helping veterans. Not to be dragged into hostility. That was when the producers began waving wildly behind the cameras, trying to signal a break. But the tension had already snapped. Denise crossed her arms. Well, maybe you should take your high horse somewhere else. And Patrick, usually patient, measured, almost philosophical, did something nobody expected. He stood up, slowly, gracefully, but unmistakably. Perhaps, he said in a low, steady voice, I should. The audience froze. Christine stood up halfway, panicked. Sir Patrick, please. But the producers intervened through the earpiece. Cut to break. Cut to break. Now. The screen suddenly flashed the Loose Women logo and the words "We'll be right back," while the studio erupted behind the scenes. But even during the break, the shouting didn't stop. Patrick was being escorted toward the backstage hallway when Denise stood up from the table, still fuming, and called after him. "You can't just walk off, this isn't Hollywood." Patrick didn't turn around. He simply said, quietly but powerfully, "No, it's not. And that's exactly the problem." Gasps echoed through the studio. A moment later, producers rushed in, security stepped closer, and the chaotic decision was made. Patrick Stewart would not be returning after the break. And that was how a legendary actor, the calmest man in show business, ended up being kicked off Loose Women. But what happened next, backstage, was even more explosive. Backstage, the atmosphere was volcanic. Producers rushed around trying to contain the damage, but word had already spread through the studio corridors like wildfire. Sir Patrick Stewart had walked off the set, and Denise Welch was still furious. Patrick stood near the dressing rooms, trying to steady his breathing. He wasn't angry, not exactly. He was disappointed. He had come with good intentions, prepared to speak about a charity that meant everything to him. Instead, he'd found himself caught in a storm he never wanted to be part of. A young assistant nervously approached him. "Sir Patrick, the producers asked if you'd be willing to come back for a calm closing segment." Patrick raised an eyebrow. A calm segment? After what just happened? The assistant swallowed. "They said it would help reduce the headlines." Patrick sighed deeply. "I'm not interested in headlines. I'm interested in honesty and respect." Before the assistant could reply, a loud voice echoed from the corridor. It was Denise. She marched toward them, still brimming with adrenaline, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. The producers tried to intercept her, but she waved them off. "Patrick," she called out, stopping a few steps away. "We need to talk." The assistant quickly disappeared. Patrick turned to her, his expression neutral but tired. "Denise, I think we've said enough on camera." "No," she said, crossing her arms. "We didn't. You walked off before we could actually resolve anything." Patrick held her gaze. "I walked off because the conversation became personal and accusatory. That was not the environment I agreed to enter." Denise let out a frustrated laugh. "Oh, come on. You're acting like I attacked you." "You did attack me," Patrick replied calmly. "Not physically, but in intention. You twisted my words. You assumed insults where none were meant. And then you demanded I defend myself against accusations that weren't real." That stopped her. For the first time, Denise looked genuinely taken aback. "Patrick," she began, softer now. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." He nodded slowly. "I believe you. But it did." A long, tense silence filled the corridor. Finally, Denise sighed and sat down on a nearby chair, rubbing her forehead. "It's just, I'm tired of people implying we're shallow. We work hard. We talk about issues. We try to be real. And when you said daytime shows lacked empathy, it hurt." Patrick thought about this for a moment, then walked closer. "Denise," he said gently, "I was speaking about an industry trend, not your show or your panel. You took it personally because you care deeply about what you do. I respect that. But caring doesn't give permission to misinterpret intent." She looked up at him. Her eyes softened. "Maybe I overreacted." Patrick offered a small, warm smile. "We all overreact sometimes. I'm not angry at you." Denise blinked, surprised by his kindness. "But," he continued, "I won't return to the stage today. Not while the air is still heavy. Not when my message would be overshadowed by the earlier confrontation." Denise lowered her eyes. "The producers won't like it." "I'm aware," Patrick replied. "But I won't compromise what I believe is appropriate." Just then, Christine Lampard approached cautiously. "Everything all right here?" she asked gently. Patrick nodded. "We're resolving things." Denise stood up, clearing her throat. "Christine, I might have been too harsh." Christine looked relieved. "I think we all felt the heat of the moment." A producer hurried over, clipboard shaking. "Sir Patrick, we're prepared to give you a full apology on air if you return for the closing." Patrick raised a hand. "No apologies needed, truly. But I won't return to the panel today. I prefer to exit with dignity, not dramatics." The producer opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't argue with that. Denise stepped forward again. "Patrick, before you go, I want to say something." He turned to her. "You didn't deserve the way I spoke to you. I was defensive. It wasn't fair. And, I'm sorry." The apology was genuine, raw, even. It softened the space between them instantly. Patrick placed a hand gently over hers. Apology accepted. The tension finally dissolved. As he prepared to leave, the cameras cut back to the live show. Christine addressed the viewers. Sir Patrick Stewart has left the studio for personal reasons. We thank him for joining us today and wish him the very best. Denise sat quietly on the panel, unusually subdued. Colleen rested a comforting hand over hers. Later that day, social media exploded. Some defended Patrick's calm dignity. Others supported Denise's emotional honesty. Headlines blazed across every website. Patrick Stewart walks off loose women after on-air clash. But behind the scenes, where the cameras couldn't follow, the truth was different. Two strong personalities had clashed, apologized, and walked away wiser. And though Patrick didn't return to the show that afternoon, he later sent flowers to the studio addressed to Denise. To clarity, to compassion, and to the courage of conversation.